a lot of my work is really focused on building healthy relationships or promoting healthy relationships and building healthy communities through the work of addressing gender-based violence. This evening I'll talk about some of the work we've been doing in the past, some of the work we're doing currently, and talk about some of the values and that underpin our approach to addressing gender-based violence, which is really grounded in community-based strategies of violence prevention and community education. So on the screen, you'll see a logo for a project that was started in 2015. It was funded by Status of Women Canada. It was called Reclaim Honor. And it was to address gender-based violence, or more specifically honor-based violence, which I'll talk about a little bit more about later, within Muslim communities. This project was co-created together with 21 young Muslim women and who are all of diverse identities and different backgrounds. And together we co-created the vision for the project, the mission for the project, and developed strategies. And we created this logo together. And so what you'll see is it looks like a tree, the trunk. And so the trunk represents the roots in our community. It represents a sign of strength in the community and hopes for continued growth in the community. But you can maybe also see a young woman. So if you take the tree and then the arms that are outstretched, so it's a young woman, and then her head, it could be pigtails, but it could also be a hijab, who's stretching out her hands and in really inviting the community, the Muslim community, to talk about and address issues of gender-based violence and holding the space for that. She's out reaching out her arms. The different speech bubbles represent different stories, different voices, and different perspectives, and recognizing the diversity that exists within Muslim communities. I think as we talk about this young woman and her work holding the work of the community in terms of addressing gender-based violence, it really represents our vision of doing the work. So it's about standing within our communities. It represents us, our strengths. It's a strengths-based perspective. Importantly, it really centers the leadership voices and experiences of women and young women on the issue, while recognizing that it's a community issue. So everyone in the community has a voice, has an obligation, a responsibility to address the issue, to be involved, to really respond and address the issue of gender-based violence and support survivors, to create safety. And it requires many voices. It requires a sense of shared and collective responsibility. I think it's important to note, as this woman stands, she stands within her community, but she also stands within the wider social context and condition and policies. And I think that's really important to note, because for us, the context is when we started this project in 2015, Stephen Harper was still in government, and a lot of the work on gender-based violence within Muslim communities was framed as issues of honor-based violence and forced marriage, which was really almost a way of singling out the Muslim community for unique forms of gender-based violence that presented in ways as though it was imported to Canada, as though gender-based violence was a singular issue within the Muslim community, looked at culture as a source of problem, framed faith maybe as a source of the problem, and so really had a very stigmatizing and othering impact. And so as this young woman stands to address the issue in her community, she stands within a context of Islamophobia, a system of racism, of tremendous systems and structures that promote inequality, marginalization, and policies that were put into place. So I think during that time, Stephen Harper also created the bill, Zero Tolerance for Barbaric Cultural Practices, or Bill S7. And that was really a way of, again, isolating and stigmatizing, and really served to heighten vulnerabilities for a young woman or women who are Muslim and experiencing gender-based violence, rather than providing really options for safety or option of strength. And so I think our work, as I see it, is always a bit about both and. And so it's rooted in challenging the Muslim community to address these issues and engage their leadership, engage their ownership. But it's also really rooted in challenging larger systems and structures and policies and conditions that marginalize, that isolate, that stigmatize, that shut down opportunities for growth on these issues, and create further vulnerability and reinforce those vulnerabilities, in fact. And I think it's true for Muslim communities in terms of thinking about how gender-based violence is isolated as sort of something that's prevalent within Muslim communities. But I think it's also about drawing those connections to how other communities are marginalized or blamed. So I think that's true in terms of thinking about how Indigenous women, and so murdered and missing women and girls, and how that issue blamed Indigenous communities and didn't look at structures and systems. And so I think it's recognizing that larger context. And I think recognizing too that when communities and families are blamed as parts of the problem, we're not really looking to engage in ways that find solutions in terms of where young women are living, where they see their sense of identity, where they see their sense of place. And so this becomes part of the problem. So a lot of our work was really challenging, doing the both with challenging within the Muslim community, challenging within wider community, and really inviting opportunities for ownership. So really, I think, providing opportunities for thinking about it's possible to address these issues and to do so collectively. In fact, it's important to do so. And let's think about the creative ways and the important ways that we can begin to do this work within our communities. And I think some of the pieces that were important is to really push back against, as we address these issues, to push back against sort of gendered Islamophobia, which is also itself a form of gender-based violence. So recognizing the multiple forms of violence that young Muslim women experience, that it's not just violence that exists in their homes or in their communities, but also within the wider community. And I think important to see the community, as the tree trunk shows, grounded in the community, as sources of strength and survival. So they're spaces of survival and healing against Islamophobia. They're spaces of survival for people that have migrated to Canada and whose migration journeys required the family to stick together and survive through tremendous, through conflict zones, through displacement, and multiple migration journeys. So I think next I'll sort of talk a little bit about some of the work we've been doing and some of our projects. So I think, as I mentioned, our project was really founded with 21 young women, and I think their voices really created the space and identity for the project. And I think it was really important for young women to build community and to build that community within Muslim communities, to have those spaces where young Muslim women could connect with each other, have conversations, see their strengths, explore their identities, explore their shared struggles, but also, I think, learn from each other about their unique struggles, because the Muslim community itself is also diverse. And so there's members of the Muslim community who are experiencing gender-based violence and Islamophobia, but also who are experiencing anti-Black racism. And so I think it's important to bring all those pieces together and to recognize that it's not a singular community, but a community made up of multiple needs. So one of the first things we did was create a photo campaign to think about engaging the community on addressing, to build, I think, invite a conversation on gender-based violence, and to think about how could we do that through a positive or proactive manner. And so we wanted to personalize the opportunity for people to step into the conversation and to see themselves as part of the conversation. And so members of our team, the 21 young women, we had added a group of 10 young men, which I think is an important value and principle as well, that this work is always about, is not just an issue for young women or women to address. I think certainly their experiences, their voices, their leadership is central, but it's also an opportunity to build allyship, engage young men in the issue as well. And to invite faith leaders, and I think that's an important component as well. So to think about who has a voice on these issues and who do we invite in a leadership capacity. And so it includes youth, it includes young people, it includes adults, parents, and it includes faith leaders as well having this voice. I think one of the beautiful things about the photo campaign is that it really mobilized an opportunity for conversation. So I think we had the photo campaign and had it exhibited in mosque spaces and community spaces where people could come together and then really facilitate constructive and valuable community conversations where people could share their perspectives and talk about what it means to them to address these issues. And so it really mobilized a lot of momentum, which I think was really fantastic. I think some of the challenges is always figuring out how ways to sustain that momentum, or how that momentum shifts and grows in different ways. But I think in that sense, it was just really, it was a valuable starting point, and it was a valuable point for building a sense of collective ownership. As we continued, I think the work in terms of centering young people and the work of leading these discussions is something that was continued to be valuable. And so some other projects we've done in the community is using forum theater. I don't know if people are familiar with forum theater, but it's a really active way of getting people engaged in the issue through bystander intervention. So together with 13 young people, mainly high school aged, they crafted 6 scripts and scenarios. They co-created the scripts and then performed them in community. And then community members, each scenario doesn't go well. And so there's an opportunity for people to step in and become a bystander and shift the dynamics of what's happened. And all the scenarios focused on different forms of family violence and gender-based violence. There was a situation, we did use forced marriage, or a young woman or girl who wants to go out, and there's a conflict with the father. And so these opportunities, was one of my favorite projects, because I think there was such momentum and growth on multiple levels, because I think for the young people themselves, they gained a sense of ownership because they really crafted the scripts and scenarios and took ownership of performing them in community. And I think the other piece then was, as they performed in community, they're engaging with intergenerational dialogue on these issues in really meaningful and genuine ways. And so I think it was my favorite project, because I think even those who came to the performances and took the risk of then stepping in and becoming part of the scenarios, I think really valued the opportunity to have these conversations and to practice these conversations in the safe context. And I think it really created a valuable opportunity for people to relate to the issue, to see this issue as something that can impact all of us, to think about their voice on the issue, and to think about when they can take on ownership or step in to address the issue. And I think it was really one of my favorite projects in that sense, because I think it was so multi-layered and so rich in terms of moving forward conversation in the community. We've been working on this project for 3 years, and to be honest, when I started it, I thought it would last, maybe we'd get it done in 6 months. And so this has been quite a commitment of 29 young people at different stages in the project. We've been working on a graphic novel project, which we've titled Amira's Story. I don't know if that title will stick, but it's about Amira and her relationship within her family. And it's really multi-layered, because you hear Amira's voice, but there's points in time in the story where you also engage with the mother, the father, the brother, and a younger sister. And so it's multi-layered because it has all those different rich perspectives. I think at this point the story is over 200 panels. I think we're at 230 panels. I think we're reaching our end. And we hope to both publish it, but we actually hope to have an exhibition so that people can walk through it and make it really interactive and engage through the story by seeing themselves walk through the story and interact with the characters, interact with the issues, and hopefully facilitate community conversations in that way as well. We've also talked about maybe doing a performance dialogue, because as we script it or practice, we always rehearse, and all of us take on characters. So I think I'm really excited to see where these creative arts pieces, art strategies go. And I think for us it's been really important to think about use strategies that are often grounded in arts, because I think it creates opportunities for people to engage, or it's an invitation more so than it is a lecture. And so it opens up dialogue. And I think this has been something meaningful in our work, and something that we've experienced as being quite positive. I think before I end, I just sort of wanted to reflect on sort of a call to action around us too. I think everyone is familiar with Me Too, and Tarana Burke in 2006 coined Me Too. And I think since then, though, the movement has really been taken up. I think we know of situations of sexual violence and sexual assault in Hollywood. And so for many women, this is based out of work in Toronto with Okazi and the Barbara Schleifer Clinic, where I think there's many women who feel that they're not represented in the Me Too movement, or their voices aren't there, their voices aren't present. And so it's about creating opportunities for us too to think about, these issues impact all our communities, but they impact them in different ways, and thinking about how they impact them in different ways. And we need to be working within communities to empower those who are part of the communities to have a voice on the issues that impact them in their lives, their communities, and their families, and to shape solutions and to shape strategies that build healthier communities and promote healthy relationships. And so for me, this is a really important call to action in terms of thinking about our work, but also thinking about how our work within the Muslim community here in London connects to the work of other communities. And I think that's something I feel, I hope that we hope to grow as well, to connect with the work that's happening in trans communities, that's happening on behalf of Indigenous women, and to recognize that while we need our own, I think we need to create ownership for our own spaces and our own voices to develop solutions and to own those solutions and to put them into, to create them. It's about being in solidarity and recognizing that I can't address my work within the Muslim community without standing in solidarity with the work that's happening in other communities as well. And I think we were asked, sorry, that was it, but we were asked to think about an invite or a call. I think, part of my ask is maybe just thinking about how we do that work, addressing the work of gender-based violence, thinking about the community you belong to and the wider community we all belong to, and how we do that and address the intersections. So recognizing that anti-gender-based violence movements need to be intersectional, and thinking about how we can always ensure that that intersectionality is in place. I also have some resources in the back in terms of a pamphlet we've produced, but then also the whole document around us too is there's copies in the back, and also copies of Rivers of Hope, which is created by a group of collective of Muslim women in the GTA area looking at gendered Islamophobia. And so that's a really wonderful toolkit as well. And another piece to invite, we're sort of in the midst of creating new campaigns, and we've got a new form theater project in place. We're hoping to have our graphic novel exhibition very soon, and we're starting a new campaign called Bridge the Gap, but there's a sign-up sheet, and we'd love, if you're interested, to come out to the exhibitions if we have them in the future, or even attend some of the forum theater performances. I think that is it.
Thank you very much, Yasmin. That was great. Thank you very much.